Okay. Hi, everybody. We are continuing today with our discussion of how the esoteric astrologer views certain factors. And the paragraph that we just completed reading said the following. I realize that these concepts are not in line with the usual astrological postulates. However, astrology would not be wasting time if it experimented with these for a while. Astrologers might discover some most interesting and arresting problems and perhaps arrive at an accuracy which is at present unknown. And it might be of some service if I enlarge somewhat upon this point, and that is what Master DK is going to do here. And we go on. In connection with the sun sign, the rising sign, and the effect of the thought form relating to the moon, the position of esoteric astrology is as follows. Now, this idea of the thought form relating to the moon is very important. There is an ancient thought form, and it seems to be activated by the position of the moon with respect to the Earth. This thought form effect is not a true radiation from the moon, which the Tibetan says has no true radiation at all, but it does seem very much to affect the lunar vehicles. In other words, the elemental lives of our personality. And as well, there are times when the position of the moon seems to bring in the energies of Vulcan for the physical plane, Neptune for the emotional, and Uranus for the mental. And these are radiations which have nothing to do with the moon per se, but they do have a transformative effect upon the elementals of the personality. So there are ancient tendencies, and these are activated by the position of the moon with respect to other planets, and there are also legitimate and true radiations which the moon veils and which its position signals as influential. All right, the sun sign. So he's been telling us quite a bit that is foundational about the three major factors of astrology, of esoteric astrology: the rising sign, the sun sign, the moon sign. The sun sign. This indicates the present problem of the man. There's that word present. It's very important with respect to the sun. It has everything to do with how the man is now. And it does not represent in any significant sense the past, although it is the present condition as it has been built up in the past, nor does it represent the future per se, except that the point opposite the sun represents the monadic influence for those who can actually receive it, understand it, and apply it. The sun sign. This indicates the present problem of the man. It sets the pace or the established tempo of his personality life. There are certain vibrations to which we respond. We are either in a tamasic state, tamas, and are relatively inert in our response to ambient energies, or we are in a more active rajasic state in which we are under the influence of desire and are moving rapidly, or we may be, the third guna is, we may be in a sattvic state, but this has more to do with what the rising sign attempts to establish. So this sun sign has something to do with the tempo and responsiveness of our life, and also with the way the personality vehicles and the different incoming energies interact with each other, whether disharmonious or harmonious, and presenting thus a certain problem of balance and regulation, of friction in our life. It is related to quality, well, the soul is as well, but this is personal quality, I would say. It is related to quality, temperament, and the life tendencies which are seeking expression during this particular incarnation. These are life tendencies which are scandic, or relating to the skandhas, or built-in momentums and patterns from previous incarnations. And they are not necessarily in a harmonious relationship with each other, but they do incline towards action. So it is related to personal quality, I would say, to temperament, and there we can think of the four elemental temperaments: the choleric, which is fiery; the sanguine, which is airy; the melancholic, which is earthy; and the phlegmatic, which is watery. Or we can reverse those sometimes, and the phlegmatic will be seen as earthy and the melancholic watery. It is related to quality, temperament, and the life tendencies built up in the personality past, which are seeking expression during this particular incarnation, and which are the present state of things. In some ways, one could almost see the sun sign as related to the present condition of the etheric body, which by the time a human being is 21 years old is said to be in the same condition as he left it in the previous incarnation. The sun sign, it says, is suggestive of the rajasic, or the activity aspect of the innate man. By this we mean the consciousness within the personality. So if the Tibetan is choosing the sun for Rajas, I suppose he will think of the moon as the tamasic aspect, or the repetitive, built-in second nature aspect, and of the rising sign as the inclination to establish sattva, which would be a more balanced state in which the personality is responding rightly to the soul, and in which the soul is establishing itself through infusion of the personality. Fundamentally, the forces here found are indicative of the line of least resistance. Well, it is natural for us to respond to the energies of our sun sign. Another line of least resistance, which is unconscious, is of course the tendency to respond to the habitual nature indicated by the moon. We could call the moon the indicator of our unconscious self in response along a line that has been well established before. So, whether there is resistance to this method of response in the present life due to the other astrological factors or not, it's something built into us and an automaticism But when we come to the way we desire and direct our thought and pursue our personality objectives, we find it easiest to operate according to the energy of the sun sign, at least in a conscious way. This is the line of least resistance consciously pursued and not unconsciously reacted to, as in the case of the moon. What I think the Tibetan is also hinting here, and maybe he'll say it, is that to pursue the higher nature of the rising sign is not a line of least resistance, and that there are many factors within the personality which will surely resist it. The sun sign being one, the moon sign being other. And you have to work in your own life to see what happens when you try to live according to the best expression of your sun sign. What are the factors which, either in your own personality or in the environment, resist this type of rising sign expression? I hope I said rising sign. I meant rising sign. It will be resisted by the sun sign, moon sign, and other astrological factors. Okay, now we move on to the ascendant. What we're looking at here is the position of esoteric astrology. But it seems that whenever I try to go up a bit, we have a peculiar condition that exists. I'll be rid of it in a moment. There we go. All right. One day maybe these things will be edited and they will, appear to flow more smoothly than they actually do. All right. The ascendant or rising sign indicates the intended life or immediate soul purpose for this incarnation. That's so important. That's an absolutely vital statement. And it's so intended. The consciousness of the solar angel, by now well engaged with the advancing personality, and as much egoic consciousness as we possess, blending with the consciousness of the solar angel, intends a certain objective for a particular incarnation, and this, the rising sign, its particular decanate, perhaps its particular dwad, as well the portion of the rising sign and its esoteric ruler particularly, these are all connected with that soul intention. I suppose if we all meditate upon it, we will find that within ourselves there is a certain objective over and above the inclinations of the personality, which as if sees things from a higher point of view, and which now and then presents to us a pattern which should be achieved by us. This is the intended life or immediate soul purpose. Some of us, when thinking of this, we might not think in terms of our rising sign, but if we do think in terms of our rising sign, we shall understand even more of what that soul objective may be. So going on here, it holds the secret of the future and presents the force. Now, when I think about the future there, remember we discussed that the same rising sign can be operating for several lives. I think I'll turn on a little light here so I look a bit less like a ghost. It holds the secret of the future and presents the force, that applied energy, which, rightly used, will lead the man to success. Okay. Well, what kind of success? Recognition, acclaim, things of that nature? No. the kind of success as success is seen in the eyes of the soul. That's the kind of success we're talking about. It represents the sattvic, or harmony aspect of life, and can produce right relationship between soul and personality in any one incarnation. Now think of that for a minute, because in some ways your rising sign and sun sign might not be compatible in terms of element or in terms of the rays they distribute. In other words, there might be a tense relationship, a disharmonious relationship between the rising sign and the sun sign. Nevertheless, this rising sign, if properly followed, will bring the sun sign into correct relationship, and that is what we are looking for. Some of you who have astrological squares between your rising sign and sun sign, or even oppositions, which means that the life will never be uneventful from the spiritual point of view, you can compare the counteractive influences of these two and see what right relationship might be. Excuse me. Let's put it this way. No matter what the conventional relationship might be, hard aspects, etc., between the rising sign and the sun sign, a correct and productive and spiritually progressive relationship can be achieved between the two. And it's up to you, in a way, to work this out in your thought as to what would be the ideal relationship between these two indicators particularly. So the Tibetan goes on, it thus points the way to the recognition of the force of the soul. Well, okay, well, it's not per se the force of the soul. It is the kind of energy which the soul can use in a particular incarnation, and which, if followed, brings one closer to soul consciousness and even to the consciousness of the divine center, which is the monad, eventually. Okay. So he's saying, some very important things about the main factors in the chart. They seem simple in a way, but you have to work this out for yourself so you understand the relationship between these two factors, soul and personality, and especially how the relationship between the rising sign and the sun sign can give you a hint as to what that relationship should be. I would throw into that the factors of the soul ray and the personality ray. In other words, the rising sign plus the soul ray should relate in a particular way to the sun sign plus the personality ray, and by following the inclination of the rising sign and getting that correct, we have a better chance of producing that right relationship between soul and personality and between rising sign and sun sign. Now we move on to the moon sign, I suppose, or just the moon in general. This type of force coming from certain planets and not from the moon, and here he doesn't really mention those planets, but he will in the course of the book, being Vulcan, physical, Neptune, astral, and Uranus, mental. This type of force indicates that which is past. Now, not necessarily the immediate past incarnation. Some people have even said it indicates all of your past incarnations. I cannot see the justification for that. Nor is it necessarily the case that the immediate past incarnation is indicated by the present moon sign. of course, reincarnational astrological research will confirm or deny what I just said. But I think that we have been through so many astrological experiences in our, there's two of me there, in our number of lives, which are thousands, thousands of lives, whether we come from the earth chain or from other positions, that the moon, as it were, draws upon certain astrological themes which have been lived through in these many lives. And we may be summoning strands of behavior, patterns of behavior, patterns of force generated from widely different areas of our lives, and they may all be gathered together under our moon sign. I mean, I'm not sure how far back it goes, because probably we tend to live through the karma of certain lives in a relatively short time. But certainly I think that the moon sign position will touch lives, a number of them, which are not necessarily sequential and are not necessarily the immediate past life. Okay, it indicates anyway that which is past, and we want to use the past. We don't want to be used by it, not be used by it. Let's just say that the unconscious person is one who tends to be used by the past. He's not aware of his habits, the things he does unconsciously, certain glamours that are so close to him that they're so built in that he doesn't even notice them. Of these things we have to become aware. Now let's see. It therefore summarizes limitation and the present handicaps as gathered from, I would say, multiple pasts. It governs the physical body, especially the dense physical body, and shows where the prison of the soul is to be found. And that the prison of the soul is found in unconsciousness. Let me put that down. Prison of the soul is found in unconsciousness. I'll just open it. See, unconsciousness. And as unconscious factors are made conscious, their chance of imprisoning us is greatly reduced. We can do something about them. But when we are doing things, saying things, thinking things, feeling things, of which we are relatively unaware because our consciousness is not focused upon them, that is indeed a prison. So we will look for Saturnian-like limitations in the area where the moon may be found, and these may be limitations in all three of our personality vehicles. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, we're getting these strange effects. The statement which I would like to make, and which grows normally out of the above, is that the zodiacal, the systemic, and the planetary energies act either as hindering or as stimulating forces according to the type of vehicle or body upon which they play, according to the type. That is the key. In other words, it's the same energies, but according to the quality of the form. So will be the good or bad effect upon that vehicle, and so will be so will be the fact of whether hindrance or stimulation is produced. So let's see further what he has to say about this. The nature of these vehicles and their capacity to attract, to respond, to reject, to absorb, and to transmute is entirely dependent upon the point in evolution attained, and also upon the general planetary condition and psychology to be found in the human family at any one time. So we cannot expect that a poorly developed vehicle will attract refined and subtle energies. We cannot expect that a highly developed vehicle will respond in a crude way to energies which produce crudeness in those with less developed vehicles. In other words, let's take a look at Mars. It can produce a very brutal response in the undeveloped human being, or a high response of courage, nobility, valor, warriorship in a highly developed human being. So the planetary rays, how they affect the vehicle, depends upon the vehicle itself, which of course is a tremendous encouragement to us to refine our vehicles so that we can get the most out of the planetary and zodiacal impingements at any time. And of course, the general planetary condition, the prevailing state of being and consciousness, and outgoing development of the planetary logos has another effect on whether we will have hindering or stimulating effects when these energies reach us. Now he's going to give a interesting kind of idea here. He's giving an example. An instance of the latter can be seen today in the world where the forces beating in an almost violent and somewhat new measure and tempo upon our planetary life are evoking a greatly intensified response from the world thinkers, and thus stimulating them to earnest effort along ideological lines, and at the same time, and this is the contrast, are drawing forth from the masses and the little evolved people nothing but terror, a miserable fatalism in which their will does not count, widespread physical depletion, and many other undesirable reactions from the form nature. So we can see that apparently the same type of energy is going to have very different effects. The effects upon the undeveloped are producing largely chaos and disintegration. The effects upon the highly developed are producing the ability to penetrate even more deeply into higher streams of energy and to benefit from that penetration and to build up the power of thought and intuition. So, let us ask ourselves, as we detect these planetary and zodiacal energies coming in, what actually is our response? Is it advancing us spiritually? Or do we find ourselves becoming more chaotic, more nervous, more disorganized, more disintegrated, less capable, and so forth? Or is it a mixture of the two? So we're speaking about the fact that energy, in a way, is neutral. I suppose also there are very many, a spectrum of different energies within any one energy. I mean, just think of the Earth from an astrological perspective having an effect on other planets and on the beings of other planets. Just think of the diversity of energies which are within the Earth, both high and low. Perhaps many of these are carried along as well and seek their targets, or at least are attracted to those who respond to them. So, an energy from a planet or a zodiacal sign or constellation is not necessarily a monolithic type of expression or flow. It can have different strata within it, but even the same stratum of energy impacting different forms will surely have different effects, either good or not so good, depending upon the development of that form. So again, let us increase the quality of our form nature through the correct physical, emotional, and mental disciplines, and especially through meditation, study, and service. So an understanding, he goes on, an understanding of these hindering or stimulating effects can be easily grasped by those who can comprehend the nature of the activities of the planet Saturn. Well, Saturn, sometimes called that old devil, with people worrying very much about what their Saturn is going to bring into their life, what sort of karma it may bring, is also called by the Tibetan the god of opportunity. And that gives us pause, because it's generally opportunity to face some obstacle within our nature or within the environment or both, and to overcome that obstacle, and or to expiate karma, or to follow our duty or our dharma in a successful way, or to align with the plan in a successful way. So anyway, now he's using Saturn as an example. This is the planet which conditions primarily the point in evolution where choice definitely becomes possible. Note that Saturn is the exalted planet in Libra, the sign of choice. It is also the hierarchical ruler of Libra, the sign of choice. So the connection of which way do you go, do you choose one pan of the scale or the other, is indicated by Saturn, where rejection of opportunity or its acceptance can be consciously undertaken. That's the factor. The Saturn is much to do with focusing the consciousness in the concrete lower mind. That's one of its types of expression. So we can come into a Saturnian situation and just say, oh, I'm out of here, I don't want anything to do with this. This is just a bad situation and I'm gone. Or we can face it. See, this is interesting because the Sun is exalted in Aries and Saturn is exalted in Libra, and those are signs in an archetypal 180-degree relationship involved with full consciousness or facing the opposition. The Sun, which is the symbol of identity, faces Saturn, which is the symbol of the other or the dweller or the object. So we can reject or we can accept and consciously undertake that opportunity, even though it will almost always be what we call difficult. And the shouldering of personal responsibility becomes a recognized fact in a planned and ordered life. Well, wow, look at the rays that are involved there. The shouldering, this is Saturn moving the physical plane and the lifting of weight. And let us also remember that Saturn is one of the rulers of Aquarius, the burden bearer. And so it involves the lifting of weights onto the shoulder, which is supposedly strong and can bear the weight. We don't just allow ourselves to be taken care of under Saturn. We assume the responsibility of taking care of ourselves. In this respect, the last sermon of the Buddha, which we recently read, at least a part of it, at the Festival of the Christ, is a very Saturnian sermon which is telling the true disciples or bhikshus to rely upon themselves. So, okay, we can reject, we can accept, we can shoulder personal responsibility, and it becomes a fact. See, there's that connection of Saturn with the concrete mind and the fifth ray. We recognize the factual nature. There's also some first ray in it, in a planned, that's ray 3 and ray 7, and ordered, that's ray 7, life. Saturn has very strong expression of the 1, 3, 5, and 7 line. And it is connected with the urge to formulate a plan, and certainly the urge to express through an ordered life. Saturn is the ruler of the physical plane, especially the dense part of it, and it's the ruler, in a way, of the entire cosmic physical plane, and certainly of the lower 3 planes, which are considered dense from the, and you like that Gemini effect? I think there's 2 of me there. Okay, it is considered the ruler of the cosmic physical plane as well. It kind of shares rulership of etheric physical planes with Uranus and itself, Uranus being the etheric part and Saturn being the dense part. But Saturn also is a correspondence to the physical permanent atom of the solar logos, and that includes both the cosmic etheric planes and the cosmic dense planes, all 7 of these solar planes. So, okay, so here's this planet Saturn, and we can choose, and according to our choice will be the manner of our development. This point in the human evolutionary process, let's see, I want to get that down there, is spoken of in the old commentary in the following symbolic phrases. Okay, amidst the whirling forces I stand confused. See, the sense of order is gone. I know them not, for during all my past they swept me up and down the land wherein I moved, blinded and unaware, the unconscious life. From place to place and point to point, they drove me up and down the land, and nowhere was there rest. It seems the activity aspect of the third ray is involved as well, related to the whirling forces, which this vorticular motion having to do with the third ray of activity. There is no position, no order, no orientation. There is simply blind activity, and one is not impelling oneself. One is compelled by outer forces which one does not understand and cannot manage. And the word land simply means one's experience. Of course, it does refer very much to the physical plane which Saturn rules and which is the primary focus of early man or the undeveloped consciousness. So in a way, as we say under the sign Cancer, very much related to Saturn, the blind unit is lost. And as far as these places and points, the man does not know where or what they are. He is disoriented, and he has no true center. Trying to, yeah, there we go. Okay. Now the old commentary continues, because experience has taken place, time has passed. Saturn, the Lord of Time, he's now not an inexperienced human being. He is more of an aspirant or a disciple, someone who's getting a grip upon himself and is no longer simply compelled by outer forces. I know them now, and here I stand. Okay, the idea of stability here. He's not standing confused. He's standing more illumined and will not move. His will is invoked. Will not move until I know the law, another Saturnian term, which governs all this movement up and down the land. In other words, we're dealing here with the law of cycles by which energy enters and, if understood, can be either controlled or cooperated with. So he's taking a much more conscious attitude. He's able to take a stand. He has will. He's studying the cycles. The influence of Capricorn and Saturn are both stronger. He is becoming immovable from the point of view of external forces. Circumstances are no longer superior to him. I may revolve and turning face the many different ways. I face some wide horizons, and yet today I stand. So he's doing this according to an act of his own will. He's not being driven to face the right, driven to face the left, up, down, without any type of control from himself. This is quite different. I will determine for myself the way to go. So he becomes a self-determining human being, operating by choice and will from his own detected center, which is probably in a way upon the lower mental plane. At least he has that mental focus. Then onward I will move under will and not under compulsion of others. I will not travel up and down the land nor turn in space. In other words, he's becoming free of that third ray rotary motion, which is blind, unplanned activity. But onward I will move. And now the first ray aspect of Saturn, which is progress onward, is now his method and direction. He's moving in a straight line. The driving forward through space is the first ray motion. Saturn is partially a first ray planet, and it represents the control of the man by his own will or his acquiescence voluntarily to conform to a higher will. Let's read that whole thing because it's it's so beautiful, and I will not interrupt it. I'll just read it. Amid the whirling forces I stand confused. I know them not, for during all my past they swept me up and down the land wherein I moved, blinded and unaware. From place to place and point to point they drove me up and down the land, and nowhere was there rest. I know them now, and here I stand and will not move until I know the law which governs all this movement up and down the land. I may revolve and turning face the many different ways. I face some wide horizons, yet today I stand. I will determine for myself the way to go. Then onward I will move. I will not travel up and down the land, nor turn in space, but onward I will move. So these are two very different responses to the influence of the planet Saturn, one upon an undeveloped man or a man at an earlier stage of evolution, and the other upon the highly developed individual who is reaching the point of conscious, willful intelligence and is interested in the control of the forces which have hitherto driven him, as it says, up and down the land. We can move on. There is another revolutionary idea which the esoteric science of astrology brings to its modern and exoteric aspects. As a matter of fact, when you think about it, esoteric astrology is meant to greatly enrich our comprehension and expression of the more ordinary astrology. The limitations of our ordinary astrology will thereby be seen. In the greater cycle of man's many incarnations, he, as is well recognized, passes through the zodiacal circle from Pisces to Aries. Okay. Well, is it well recognized? Perhaps among esotericists it is well recognized, but you cannot go to the exoteric astrologer and talk about this kind of retrograde motion. Anyway, DK does say, thus retrograding through the signs as he follows the sweep or path of the sun's retrogression. Well, there's not really a retrogression of the sun at all, we know. What there is only an apparent retrogression of the sun, or of the vernal point, as the vernal point seems to regress against the background of stars. It is established at an earlier and earlier point each year, passing through 1 degree every 72 years, and through an entire sign of 30 degrees every 2,160 years. There's a lot to be worked out there. Many, many questions, but anyway, we'll go on here. Tibetan says, this phrase has always disturbed me. The sun's retrogression is the phrase which has disturbed him. The sun, of course, is not moving backwards. It's only our own, the wobble of our Earth's axis, which causes the vernal point to align slightly differently each year, appearing to regress against the background of the zodiac, the stars of the zodiac. DK goes on and says, this phrase has always disturbed me, but the apparent retrogression based upon the precession of the equinoxes is all an integral part of the great illusion. And I suppose if we look at what the great illusion is, we have discussed this a little bit, we will find that it is based upon our very limited perception, our ability to see only a very small part of all movements in our planetary system, our solar system, our cosmic system. If we had the all-seeing eye, then the great illusion would not exist, unless, of course, we want to define the entire universe as the great illusion, and there are some Vedantists and other Hindu thinkers which would say, yes, that's a very good idea. The universe is all illusion. So anyway, there is an apparent retrogression of the sun, but it's based upon the precessing equinoxes, and it produces at least a perception in which we presently live. It may be an illusory perception, but we have to always take it into consideration. And interestingly enough, even though the sun is not really regressing at all, it's simply the Earth's orientation, we are accessing the constellations against which it is seen due to the apparently backward movement of the vernal equinox. So, in fact, the energies are corresponding to this apparent retrogression. And we are moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and sure enough, we are being strongly influenced now by Aquarian energies, and there's nothing illusory about that. But, you know, the Tibetan has a much greater point of view, and so does our solar god, far, far greater. And according to the perception of our solar god, that which we consider real would look like an illusion, at least in the way we see it. The moment a man begins to emerge out of that illusion, the great illusion, and is no longer subject to the glamour and to the effect of the world Maya, and this I think especially belongs to the lower 18 subplanes, that moment, the motion of the great wheel of life is reversed, and he then begins slowly and laboriously to work in the opposite direction. Well, okay, we're dealing with two kinds of retrogression here. One is the kind that affects our entire planet, and we cannot deny that due to the wobble of the Earth's axis, which is occurring in an opposite direction to its rotation and to its revolution. So we've got three circular movements going on here. One is the rotation of the Earth. One is the revolution of the Earth around the Sun, and the other, going in the contrary direction, is the wobble of the Earth's axis. There's also other kinds of motions called nutations, and I'll leave those things to the astronomers particularly. So there's no denying that the vernal point is changing against the background of the stars. And, you know, sometime we'll get out one of our astronomy programs here and try to take a look at this. But DK is talking about a different kind of retrogressive movement. And he's saying that basically a man tends to be influenced by the series of signs moving in a direction contrary to the way we usually consider zodiacal movement. In other words, we go Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, etc., instead of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc. And this, as I explained in one of our earlier programs, relates to the flow of energies within the human body. You know, whether they pass directly through the higher centers, the energies from above, and animate the lower centers, or whether the energy of the lower centers is lifted back up into the higher centers. There are different motions of energy within the human body, and when the lower centers, below the diaphragm, are being emphasized, then we have what is called the retrogressive action of the zodiac. And when the higher centers are emphasized, we have what is called the reversal of the wheel, and we are considering the signs in clockwise order. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that when you are an average or undeveloped person, you are moving sequentially in your birth sign from Pisces to Aquarius to Capricorn, etc. Nor does it mean when you are a more developed soul-conscious person that you are moving from, let us say, from Aries to Taurus to Gemini and so forth. That will probably not be borne out. I think we can see that already in some of those reincarnational cases of which we know just a little. Okay. So then, when we are more developed human beings, we pass through the signs from Aries to Pisces, and we are beginning to function then as souls. Okay. So, right, there we go. He begins patiently and consciously to function as a soul. And when we're dealing with patience and consciousness, the planet Saturn is very important. We're getting a grip on ourselves, and rather than rushing around under Martian impulse, we are steady and sequential, and we observe time more wisely. Saturn, the Lord of Time. So in a way, the whole reverse, the whole ordinary wheel going backwards is kind of a Martian wheel of impulse, Martian. And it has to do with the personality, which as a whole, DK will later tell us, is ruled by Mars. When we're going on the reversed wheel of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, etc., we are pursuing a Saturnian path, and that is our opportunity to build in a true soul response to circumstance, rather than simply being driven, there's Mars again, driven up and down the land. He begins patiently and consciously to function as a soul, struggling towards the light of Taurus, we might say, until finally he emerges at the end of the path in Pisces, a world victor and a world savior. Oftentimes the word savior is used in relation to the advanced Piscean, but the whole idea of victor is also there. We might even call it, as is connected with the sixth initiation, a victor through clear, pure will. He then knows the significance of the triumph over death, the death of consciousness and form, because he has surmounted and overcome desire. Okay, now I think we are reaching perhaps near the end of this program. I'll be able to see in just a moment. Yes, we are. We have reached that point. So we will, as usual, end with the great invocation, and we will carry on in our next discussion with a little more about the way that the man travels on the zodiac, or through the zodiac according to his stage of development. Okay, so let us sound together the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, everyone, we are going to continue then with Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 10, as soon as I can find the time to continue. And we will be carrying on with the idea of the two directions that the man can take, and this is one of the very interesting ideas in the new esoteric astrology. Do we go apparently backwards through the zodiac in the early days and then forward according to the normal order of signs? So, meanwhile, I wish you all well, and we will carry on at the next possible occasion. And we'll see you then.